Today's lesson is Egging on Science. What a dinosaur embryo tells us about birds. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our program. I'm Roger.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're going to talk about dinosaurs. Specifically, we're going to talk about a dinosaur embryo that was found quite some time ago in China, but they finally figured out that there is a skeleton inside that egg, inside that embryo, or it is an embryo inside an egg, rather, and that can tell us a lot about birds. Maybe you've heard the idea that birds are descended from dinosaurs.
Absolutely. This is sort of taking us into Jurassic Park movie territory, finding dinosaur eggs that are now fossils. Of course, when they're fossils, that means they've been basically turned into stone. So let's find out about this. First of all, we, of course, have that great little joke in our title, Egging on Science. When you egg someone on, you're kind of encouraging that person. You're kind of saying things to get them to do something. You might, cheer for your friend to give them a bit of courage in a stressful situation or something like that. So we're encouraging science, we're egging on science. And of course, the joke with embryos being, something that we often find in eggs in nature. So what a dinosaur embryo tells us about birds. Sounds very, very interesting. Let's check out our article and then we'll come back to talk about it. Egging on science. What a dinosaur embryo tells us about birds. This past December, an unexpected discovery sent a wave of excitement through scientific circles. Published in an academic journal, the find concerns a dinosaur egg fossil containing an almost perfectly preserved skeleton. Such complete examples of dinosaur embryos are very rare, and this one sheds light on yet another connection between modern-day birds and ancient theropods, a dinosaur group from which our feathered friends are believed to have evolved.
大家好，第一部分我们看到片语 shed light on something， 表示阐明使人了解，或是使明朗清楚。举例来说 ，Scientists shed new light on the problems with the newly developed machine。科学家用这台新发展出的机器进一步阐明这个问题。或是 This book sheds light on what it was like to work in a coal mine。这本书明白描述在煤矿坑工作的情形。
Okay, let's talk now about the first part of our article. Again, we're talking about dinosaur embryos and what they can tell us about birds. Now, this past December, an unexpected discovery sent a wave of excitement through scientific circles. So this discovery occurred back in December, and it was made news, and lots of people found out about it in the scientific community. And then a wave of excitement passed through scientific circles. Scientists got really excited about this news that came out last December.
And what was the news? It says, published in an academic journal, the find concerns a dinosaur egg fossil containing an almost perfectly preserved skeleton. All right, so this is pretty big news. It was first announced in an academic journal. This is one of those sort of science-based magazines that has a lot of research and stuff. Mainly it's interesting to, experts in a certain field. They'll have academic journals for almost anything you could possibly think of being taught in universities, and doctors and PhDs write their latest research in there. But this one is really interesting. The find, we could also say the discovery, is about, or it concerns, a dinosaur egg fossil. Now, fossils are something I'm sure most of you are familiar with, if only from Jurassic Park movies or Discovery Channel documentary. But basically, when living things die a long, long time ago, we're talking millions of years probably, sometimes they get covered in sand or silt or mud, and through a sort of chemical process, what was once bone or possibly even skin or feathers becomes kind of a stone. It becomes mineralized. But the great thing about fossils are they provide basically a complete model or a complete reproduction of something that lived millions and millions of years ago. And a lot of this is, of course, why we have dinosaur bones in museums. They're not the actual bones of the dinosaur. They are the fossil. What has happened to those bones as they've been turned into minerals over millions of years. Now, this dinosaur egg fossil, it contained an almost perfectly preserved skeleton. Well, fossils are great because they do preserve things. To preserve something is basically to save it, to keep it safe. You might preserve food by putting it in a jar and closing that jar very tightly. We preserve food in different ways because we want it to be fresh to eat later on. And in this case, it wasn't preserved vegetables, it was a preserved skeleton in a fossil form. What are skeletons? Basically, those are all your bones. So if you took off all your flesh and skin and muscle, what would be left? Your bones. Not just one bone. I think the human skeleton is about 206 bones. And if we talk about a complete skeleton of a dinosaur, that's a very rare thing. So even having most or even parts of the skeleton of a dinosaur can help scientists learn a lot. But the skeleton, basically the collection of bones that made up a living animal or make up a living animal.
Yep, those bones were perfectly preserved inside that egg fossil, so therefore we have an almost complete skeleton there, and that can tell us a lot about dinosaurs. Now, such complete examples of dinosaur embryos are very rare, and this one sheds light on yet another connection between modern-day birds and ancient theropods, which is a dinosaur group from which our feathered friends are believed to have evolved. So this is quite a long sentence here. Of course, such examples of a preserved skeleton inside a fossil egg, well, such an example is very, very rare. It's very difficult to find that. And this one sheds light on another connection between birds and dinosaurs. So here we've got the phrase to shed light on, which means it lets us know about something. We can become more familiar with that thing. It kind of tells us something more about that thing. Maybe not the whole story, but it does give us an idea. And of course, there's a theory that modern birds evolved from dinosaurs. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's now listen to the second part.
The egg was dug up by Yingliang Group in southern China's Guangzhou in 2000. But its secrets weren't uncovered until over a decade later when the company began preparations to open a natural history museum. Sorting through fossils kept in storage, an employee spotted bones showing through a crack in the egg's surface. Half of the outer layer was then chipped away to expose the specimen inside. When researchers examined the skeleton, they discovered that it was curled up in a manner nearly identical to chicken embryos just before they hatch. This tucking position, which was previously thought unique to birds, suggests that some avian traits may have first appeared in non-avian dinosaurs.
第二部分我们看到单字 uncover， 这个字是动词，指揭露或是发现。例如 The detective uncovered some clues that he hopes would help solve the crime. 警探发现了一些他希望有助于解开这起犯罪的线索。也可以说 Construction workers uncovered the remains of several unidentifiable animals. 建筑工人发现好几具无法辨识的动物骨骸。另外补充一个 uncover 的同义动词 disclose, D-I-S-C-L-O-S-E, disclose, 表示透露或是公开。像是 The candidates disclosed their financial records. 候选人公开他们的财务记录。或是 The police chief held a press conference to disclose the details of the case. 警察局长举行记者会，公布这起案件的细节。再来我们看到名词 trait， 指特征、特性或是特点。例如 Beatrice inherited traits from both her parents, green eyes from her father and big ears from her mother. Beatrice 遗传到双亲的特征，爸爸的绿眼睛和妈妈的大耳朵。另外补充一个 trait 的同义单字 feature, F-E-A-T-U-R-E, feature. 这个字是名词，意思是特点或是特色。例如 What features does this new TV have that the old one doesn't? 这个新电视有什么特点是旧款没有的？或是 The new computer features a smaller size and a longer battery life. 那款新电脑以体积更小、电池寿命更长为特色。
Okay, so remember we're talking about a dinosaur egg fossil. Well, the egg in question was dug up by Yingliang Group in southern China's Guangzhou in 2000, but its secrets weren't uncovered until over a decade later, when the company began preparations to open a natural history museum. Interesting. So, of course, if you're going to remove something from the ground, you need to dig it up. So if you found a treasure map or something and you know where the treasure is, you can dig up the treasure. Here, dug up is the past participle here. Dig, dug, and dug. And so the egg was dug up by Yingliang Group. And this is passive construction here. Of course, the thing cannot dig itself out of the ground, so someone has to do it. So the egg was dug up by this Yingliang Group in southern China.
That's absolutely right. But that was back in 2000, a long time ago, more than 2 decades ago. But its secrets weren't uncovered until over a decade later. So, of course, a lot of this scientific research, especially when they're dealing with something they've never seen before, it can take a long time. The scientists want to be very careful. But when we talk about making discoveries, using a term like uncovering secrets is, another good, interesting way of writing. Basically, scientists learning new things through research. They are uncovering the secrets of space or of the atom or of, science in all sorts of different ways. And I guess the writer might also be making a little joke about digging things up. When you dig something up, you uncover the earth that was over top of it. Imagine a dog digging up a bone, as you might see in a cartoon. Well, that dog, in a very real way is uncovering the bone in a sort of real physical way. But we also talk about learning new things as uncovering information or uncovering secrets or something like that. So it took a long time, about a decade, for these scientists to really be confident in what they were seeing. And what happened? Well, it was kind of a happy accident. It happens when the company began preparations to open a natural history museum. So, in fact, one of the first things that they noticed about this special egg wasn't really based on really focused intentional research. It actually happened as they were just moving these fossils around to put them in a museum. So it was really through a moving process that something almost that could have been a disaster actually happened.
Yep, so the Yingliang Group was preparing to open a natural history museum, and as you said, they were sorting through the fossils, which were kept in storage. This bone goes here, this skeleton goes there, etc. They were sorting through the fossils, and an employee, a person who worked for this company, spotted bones showing through a crack in the egg's surface. So if you spot something, that means you see something that is usually kind of difficult to see. You might spot a friend on the street. There are hundreds of people on the street, but you spotted your friend. Hey, that's Joe. I know him. He's in that heavy metal band. Hey, I'd like to go talk to him and maybe get tickets to his concert or something like that. So in this particular case, this employee was maybe sorting through the eggs and spotted bones and thought, that's interesting. I see some bones through that crack. A crack is an opening in a surface. Usually it's a jagged line. Of course, you can see cracks in eggs sometimes, especially if you buy those tea eggs at convenience stores. They might have cracks in them.
Absolutely. So it was very lucky that this employee saw something that maybe other people had looked at these eggs and not spotted this crack. And so what did they do? Well, they decided to investigate. They're good scientists. That's what scientists do. Half of the outer layer was then chipped away to expose the specimen inside. They're being very careful with this fossilized egg, so only half of the outer layer, what I think most of us would consider to be the shell of the egg, it was then chipped away. When you chip away at something, you're probably trying to break or cut into something very, very hard, like stone. If you want to cut into stone, you're not doing it with a kitchen knife or something like that. You're probably going to take two tools, maybe a hammer in one hand, a chisel, a sort of spiked piece of metal in the other hand, and by hitting the end of the chisel with your hammer, you're going to break away tiny little bits of that stone each time you hit it. This is going to take an extremely long time. So when we talk about chipping away at something, we're talking about cutting into stone. You might also use this expression to talk about getting to work on a really big project, something that you won't finish in a day or a week or maybe even months, but every little bit that you do will get you closer to the finish line. You're going to chip away at that project. Here they're chipping away at actual stone, at this fossilized eggshell, and then they expose the specimen inside. A specimen? It's kind of what scientists call something that they're learning about, something that they have a small piece of. It could be a specimen from some kind of new disease that they found, like germs, or a specimen of a moon rock, something that they've collected probably at great difficulty, and they might take little bits of this thing and do experiments and tests and things like that. So specimens have to be treated very carefully, have to be looked at very carefully as well, because hopefully even from a small piece or a small specimen of something new, scientists can make all sorts of wonderful discoveries.
And it goes on to say, when researchers examined the skeleton, they discovered that it was curled up in a manner nearly identical to chicken embryos just before they hatch. So if something's curled up, it's tightly enclosed on itself. Cats like to curl up when they take a nap, etc. And this tucking position, which was previously thought unique to birds, suggests that some avian traits may have first appeared in non-avian dinosaurs. So if something's tucking, again, it's like being curled up, like cats or other animals will put themselves in a tucking position. They'll be curled up. And yes, scientists thought that, hey, that was unique to birds. Only birds did that. And now we're talking about avian traits or bird traits or characteristics, and they may have first appeared in non-avian dinosaurs. Isn't that interesting? Okay, that brings us to the end of the second part of our lesson for today. Let's move on now to the third part. We'll listen to it first.
It's remarkable to get a glimpse into the very first stages of life of animals that lived more than 70 million years ago, said Lindsay Zano, head of paleontology at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. The evidence that birds are living theropod dinosaurs is, at this point, overwhelming. According to scientists, fossilized embryos could play a key role in showing how birds came to develop wings capable of flight. Other eggs found at the same site are yet to be examined, so there's no telling what fascinating new information could still be unearthed.
最后第三部分我们看到单字 overwhelming， 这个字是形容词，意思是某事物巨大的、势不可挡的或是压倒性的。举例来说， Robin found the newest skyscrapers in Shanghai's Pudong district to be overwhelming. Robin 觉得上海浦东区最新的那些摩天大楼让人有压迫感。也可以说 New hires may find the workload overwhelming at first, but they soon become accustomed to it. 新进员工一开始可能会觉得工作量不胜负荷，不过他们很快就会习惯了。另外，把单字字尾的 ing 去掉，就变成了动词 overwhelm， 指令人喘不过气来或是使不知所措。像是 When Arlene arrived at her new university, the course load overwhelmed her. Arlene 上了新大学后，课程分量让她招架不住。或是 Hospitals were overwhelmed with patients after the quake. 医院在地震后收治伤患忙不过来。
Okay, here in the third part, we've got Lindsay Zano, and here's what she said about this specimen. It's remarkable to get a glimpse into the very first stages of life of animals that lived more than 70 million years ago. If you get a glimpse into something, you can see something, but not totally. You just get a little glimpse of it. You can spot it a little bit, and you learn a little more as a result.
Absolutely. Very, very interesting. And they're getting a glimpse into the first stages of life. When we talk about a stage, it's basically kind of like a step through a process. There will be several stages to booking a holiday. You first have to find out where you're going, when you're going, make the reservations, get your plane tickets. All of these are kind of like steps or stages in a longer process. So these are the first stages of life of animals that lived more than 70 million years ago. Absolutely amazing. But yes, when we're talking about dinosaurs, we are talking about huge periods of time. This is from Lindsay Zano. She's the head of paleontology at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. So if you want to have a fossil examined, someone who knows a lot about paleontology is the person to talk to, because paleontology is basically the study of fossils. So they know all about different fossils. They can probably identify many different animals. They know how fossils are formed. And then she goes on to say the evidence that birds are living theropod dinosaurs is, at this point, overwhelming. This sounds almost like 100% fact at this point that birds, modern-day birds, are living theropod dinosaurs. They are very, very closely and very directly descended from this bird-like class of dinosaurs from, again, 70 million years ago. The evidence at this point, she's saying, is overwhelming. When something is overwhelming, it's almost too powerful to fight against. The overwhelming force of the waves, after a tsunami, or the winds after a tornado, or a hurricane or typhoon or something like that. Very, very powerful. You can't fight against it. There's no point in arguing, well, no, I don't think birds are descended from dinosaurs. There's really no point. There's just way too much evidence at this point in time.
And the article goes on to say, according to scientists, fossilized embryos could play a key role in showing how birds came to develop wings capable of flight. So the scientists are talking about these embryos that are fossilized, or they have become fossils, and they could play a key role. They could be a major component in showing us that birds did develop wings that were capable of flight. If something's capable of flight, that means it has the ability to fly like birds. Other eggs found at the same site are yet to be examined, so there's no telling what fascinating new information could still be unearthed. So there's no telling. We just don't know the new and fascinating things we might find out. And of course, these things will be unearthed. An interesting way to end the article, because to unearth something means to reveal something, but it also means to dig something out of the ground. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Let's listen now to Hanny, our beloved Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny， 今天要来练习文意选填的题型。那我们先来快速浏览题目的10个选项。 A.Chipped away. Chip away 它是指说剥落，像是用工具去剥落啊，小块小块的弄掉。那这边 chipped 它有可能是过去式或过去分词。B. Capable 它是形容能够的，有能力的，后面常常会搭配 of， 所以同学们可以留意一下你待会空格后方有没有 of。 好，再来 C. Dug up， 这个 dig up 就是挖出崛起，那这边的 dug 它有可能是过去式或过去分词。 D. Unique 它是形容独特的，独一无二的。 E. Spotted它可以形容是有斑点的，有花纹的，那这个字也有可能是 spot 的过去式或过去分词哦。那这时候 spot 它当动词有看见、发现或是认出的意思。F. Containing 它是 contain 的现在分词，那么 contain 它有包含、容纳或是控制、遏制的意思。G. Evidence 这个名词表示证据、证明，其实 evidence 也可以当动词，可是常用被动语态，所以这边就不列入考虑咯。H. Fascinating 它可以形容是迷人的、非常有趣的。I. Stages 它可以是复数可数名词，表示阶段、时期。那这个字其实也可以是单数动词，那么 stage 当动词就有上演、演出或者是举办、举行的意思。J. Evolved 它可能是过去式或过去分词，那是用来表达使什么逐步演化，使什么逐步发展。好，那我们接着就来做题目咯。第一题他说什么什么 The find concerns a dinosaur egg fossil 空格An almost perfectly preserved skeleton 空格前面呢，我们看到它是完整的子句，然后空格后面是带有修饰语的名词 An almost perfectly preserved skeleton 那可以推测空格是要填入分词，也就是 VING 或是 PP 去构成分词片语，然后我们用来描述先行词 A dinosaur egg fossil 从语义上来判断呢，应该是要表达恐龙蛋化石里面包含了一块几乎保存完好的骨骼，所以这边最适合选项是 F containing 去表达包含的那种语义哦。好，第二题他说什么什么 A dinosaur group from which our feathered friends are believed to have 空格。好，那我们看到关系代名词 which 前方有介系词 from， 那它其实就是从关系子句的句尾移过来的，这个 from 是从句尾移过来，那如果你把它还原，关系子句会写成 which our feathered friends are believed to have空格 from 好，所以这边就可以推断说空格里面要填入过去分词 PP 那大家应该都听过鸟类从恐龙演化而来的说法嘛，这题的答案就要选 J evolved 比较适合。好，第三题他说 The egg was 空格by 点点点好，这样的句型它是用到被动语态，我们就可以考虑的选项是 A chipped away C dug up E spotted 从语义上来判断它应该是指蛋被挖掘出土，所以要选 C dug up。 第四题他说 Sorting through fossils kept in storage An employee 空格 bones showing through a crack in the egg surface 前半句它是用到分词构句，然后用来描述主词 an employee 说一名员工在整理保存于储藏室的化石时，他空格透过蛋表面的裂缝露出的骨头。好，我们看到空格里面呢应该要用过去式动词，然后 bones 是它的受词，现在可以考虑的选项就有 A chipped away E spotted 从语义上来判断呢，应该是说这一名员工他发现了骨头，所以我们选 E spotted。 好，再来看第五题他说 Half of the outer layer was then 空格 to expose 点点点这边应该是用到 be 动词搭配过去分词 PP 来构成被动语态，现在我们就只剩下 A chipped away 就是表达说外层的一半呢被剥除来露出点点点点点。再看到第六题他说 This tucking position which was previously thought 空格 to birds 好，这个空格是出现在非限定用法的关系子句当中，用来补充说明前面的先行词 this tucking position 来说 this tucking position 以前被认为是怎么样怎么样的。好，那么 thought 后面是要接形容词来当补语，这个意思才完整嘛，我们会用 think 加上某人或某事物再加形容词去表达说认为某人或某事物怎么样。那由于空格后面是 to birds， 我们这边就只有形容词 unique 是符合的， be unique to somebody or something 就是说是某人或某事物独有的特有的，所以这边答案选 D unique。 第七题他说点点点点点 get a glimpse into the very first空格 of life 我们从空格前面的 the very first 还有后方的 of life 来判断这个空格是要填入名词，那可以考虑的选项有 I stages 和 G evidence， 那这边其实只有 stages 符合语义，我们用来表达说一窥来一探生命的最初阶段。好，第八题他说 the 空格 that birds are living theropod dinosaurs is逗号点点点，那这个句子的主词是 the 空格，然后后面用 that 子句来说明这个主词的内容，动词是 is， 所以可以推测主词是单数名词，那答案就只能选择 G evidence。 第九题他说点点点 showing how birds came to develop wings 空格 of flight。空格和 of flight 是用来修饰 wings。那我们先前不是有提过说要注意介系词 of 吗？那这边的答案我们就是要选 be capable。Wings capable of flight 就是指能够飞行的翅膀。最后第10题他说 There's no telling what 空格 new information could still be unearthed。最后我们只剩下选项 H fascinating， 用它来形容 new information 就可以表达迷人的很吸引人的新资讯了。好，以上是今天的讲解，我们回顾今天的单字吧。
Fossil.The museum contains hundreds of dinosaur fossils. Preserve. The historic building is very well preserved for its age. Skeleton. We found an old sheep skeleton on the cliffs above the sea. Uncover. The police officers uncovered a plot to steal the valuable painting. Crack. Water is leaking out of the crack in the pipe. Specimen.Alec has some interesting specimens in his aquarium. Trait. This breed of dog has a number of traits that make it a good pet. Overwhelming. The politicians' proposal to create more parks met with overwhelming support.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Mike.
I am Roger. See you next time.